Okay, so Eaton, you recently commissioned S&P, is that still Standard & Poor's report on the intersection of digital transformation and the energy transition. And you basically looked at 4 critical power sectors, which is the building, data center, manufacturing or industrial, and utility. And the key finding seems to have been seems to be a gap between digital transformation and energy transition efforts, or put it another way, most of the organizations in those sectors want to transition away from their current power sources, but they don't have the digital strategies in place to do that. So can you sort of unpick that, if that's all right?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great subject area, and what we've found that people aren't making the connection between the digitization or the digitalization of their business and the energy transition. So in many ways, we've got 2 transitions, one digital, one energy, and they're extremely interlinked. We will not be able to conduct the energy transition in an orderly or elegant way without the use of digital technology. Likewise, we cannot responsibly fully digitize our economy and our businesses without paying good heed to the source of the energy that provides all the energy you need for that digital transformation. From a planetary and environmental perspective, it would be irresponsible to just think there's an abundant source of electrical energy to fuel the digital transition. It's just not there. We need to do both transitions in harmony. And the good news is that they're complementary. Digital can enable the energy transition, and then the energy transition will provide the green energy needed for the full development of the digital transition. And what the report identified was that in the mindsets of many segments, and we're not joining the dots between the 2. We're not looking at how they are both reciprocal and can feed one another in making a more effective transition to both.
Okay, and in terms of where folks are with each of those, my guess would be, without knowing, that people are sort of rushing headlong towards digital transformation, and maybe sustainability or moving to different energy sources is slightly behind. Is that correct when you say they're sort of out of sync at the moment? Is that the correct way of looking at it?
Yeah, I guess the harshest thing I could say is that we've been solving the wrong problem. When people have been focused on building or data center or high energy use environments, they've been looking at how can I be more efficient? How can I use less to generate more, which is very laudable. I mean, that has been correct. But fundamentally, the electricity coming into the building is fossil based. So unless you tackle that issue, all your efforts on limitation and efficiency are fractional compared to the bigger issue of switching to renewable-based energy sources. So we have to move from the era of efficiency to the era of sustainability. And sustainability in its broader definition, including the renewable energy generation, but also other sustainable factors about, the carbon circular economy and water use, land use, and all the effective resource utilization that form a sustainability program. But focusing in on energy and doing everything we can to promote the generation of renewables and the adoption of renewables is now paramount. So we've gone way past efficiency being the issue. Sustainability is the issue.
And I believe the report uncovered I suppose, slightly depressing fact that it seems that a lot of organisations don't even track their sustainability efforts in a sort of formal way. They don't have maybe energy intelligence metrics, and they've got lots of sort of non-digital legacy systems they're wrestling with. I mean, I suspect of those 4 industries, the data center industry might be a little bit ahead of the others, because obviously they're dealing in IT and lots of power, so they're focused on it. But just thoughts as to how bad that situation is, and whether it's got to improve, but do you think it is improving?
I think it is improving, and I think digital is a way to enable that to happen, because digitizing your business processes automatically gives you the greater operational insights. So your toolkit has been improved. Now the goodwill that people have in terms of their green credentials and sustainability will get a new tool, and that tool is digital. Because if you can survey and capture all your distributed assets and measure, monitor, manage those assets on a digital platform, you now have a much more effective way to enact the replacement of old inefficient equipment with newer effective equipment, and being able to dispose of that equipment in a circular economy fashion. And all this becomes what is an academic approach becomes a practical approach, because you now have the digital tool set to do that.
Okay, and in terms of sort of data center industry specifics, it's no surprise that it highlights that the industry is looking at renewables, doing stuff around that, but also energy storage, and I think there's a bit of an increased interest in potentially selling power back to the grid. So can you just perhaps, if it's possible, to sort of highlight where we are with each of those and what the potential? I know energy storage, for example, is an exciting area, but perhaps the reality so far hasn't met with the expectations. So yeah, just some thoughts around each of those.
I think a couple of factors for the data center industry. First of all, the data center industry can only use the energy that is made available to it. And just like any consumer, should not be chastised for the fact that that energy is fossil based. And I think out of any industry, they have been vanguards of pushing for renewable energy generations. Companies have done the best they could. They've bought carbon credits. They've tried to source energy outside of their jurisdiction under green PPAs. They've been able to do all that, but that's not enough. And some companies, perhaps less earnest, could be said to have tried greenwashing approaches. And we're now at a juncture where you just have to red card all that greenwashing. And we have to now take the drive for renewable energy generation far more seriously. And the data center industry collectively can be a very, very large voice, and is a large voice, asking for that renewable generation to happen. But not just as a consumer, not just to clean the bib of the data center industry by providing renewable energy. The data center industry itself can contribute, because the vast energy reserves that the report identifies that are locked into the backup systems of the data centers are effective reserves that can help with the accelerated adoption of renewable generation. So you can bring more renewable energy onto the grid by having a bidirectional relationship with the data center operators for those energy stores. So energy can be stored in those areas when renewables are being produced, and then energy can be released when the grid requires it. And not just energy, but also the very important factor of frequency containment, because as the grid adopts more and more renewables, it's susceptible to variations impacting the grid frequency. So just stepping on or off the grid for milliseconds can have a tremendous contribution to the stability of the grid and the onboarding of higher levels of renewables. So the data center as a collective not only is a voice for renewable energy generation, but can now actively participate as a good grid citizen.
And in terms of that, I mean, I think I'd be right in saying that at the moment it's mainly individual, data center companies that engage on their own with, in terms of energy storage, selling power back to the grid. Do you think there's maybe a need for an industry-wide, as you say, a sort of an umbrella organization to coordinate it? And also, I know there are still some data centers that, perhaps a little bit still suspicious, hang about, if we give this power, well, we sell this power off and then suddenly we need it, we're going to be caught short ourselves. So just thoughts as to how it can be, that process can be speeded up and optimized.
Yeah, well, the European Data Center Association is a trade association of the co-location operators, and they have formed a pact to become carbon neutral by 2030. But we need to go to the next level in terms of the specific measures that will take on a per site basis has to be clear. And I think they could augment that strategy by going one step further, that it's not just about being carbon neutral on site. It's the role the data center can actively play on the larger grid system, I think, can be advanced. And the leader in the field is Microsoft. Microsoft, amongst other hyperscalers, have been very earnest in their commitments in terms of sustainability and their green credentials. And what Microsoft are going to be activating in 2022 is one of their data centers will participate on the grid for those grid services that I mentioned, those auxiliary services that can help a grid adopt more and more renewables. So really, with support of Eaton, Microsoft is way out in front in terms of this next generation data center design and model. And I think looking at the trade associations that exist, once that moves out into be a real world demonstration at grid scale, I think it'll follow through as a policy by the data center community. And it's important that the data center community act as a collective, and because if they don't, just like we've seen in the Energy Efficiency Directive from the EU, the data center above any industry has been highlighted and scrutinized for its energy use. So to avoid any difficult regulation, it's very wise for the data center industry to be proactive and set itself these goals to avoid difficult regulations in the future.
Okay, and the report also uncovered, I think, that what it termed as operational optimization is a prerequisite to address these twin, digital transformation, energy transition objectives. So again, what did it find is going on now, if you like, and where is the improvement required? Because obviously we're aware that people are doing increased amounts of sort of optimization programs using a lot more technology, but where's the problem still lie?
Well, it's the reason we haven't been able to achieve some of the efficiencies is that many large organizations are in fact blind to not only their digital assets, but their electrical assets. So that's where Eaton is extending the capability of its Bright Layer system as a platform to give that operational visibility of, first, what is in my network? I have two networks, an IT network and a power network. Where are they? What do I have? What is their energy performance? Do I have kind of idle assets consuming energy where they're supporting a low-level IT load that could be shifted to a different location, or different business processes being shifted to different platforms to reduce the overall energy consumption? So these power networks in large extended organizations have never really been managed in that way before. And an example of that, we've worked with a client in North America who wanted to adopt a next generation approach to the 500 plus of its facilities across North America, and to manage its fleet management of vehicles as well as those facilities. And they've adopted the Eaton Bright Layer platform to give them that visibility of assets and their power utilization so that they can begin the process of optimizing the performance and driving efficiency through the energy network that supports their business.
Okay, so I think you've, I was going to ask, I still will ask, but I think you've semi-answered my next couple of questions. But I think the report also does highlight the need for this new digital toolkit, which obviously the Eaton Bright Layer, I think, you describe it as a digital foundation. So, I mean, you've alluded to some of the things it can do, but can you give us perhaps just a quick overview of what the possibilities are with it, and clearly then the benefits that people receive from it?
Well, in Bright Layer, you've multiple functions. One is giving that visibility, that visualization of your power network that supports your business. It's connected then into the IT network. So again, you use your own IT network to create that visualization. But through energy power monitoring systems that can be deployed on all the strategic assets in the network, you then get that visibility of power utilization. And then you can associate that with the various applications that are being supported. So it creates that visualization first: asset management, location, power consumption, efficiency, and application support all become visible. And then you can start to enact the diagnoses to see, well, where do the efficiencies lie in that overall network. So, and then once you start to do that, you can build on what Brightlayer has brought in is a series of microservices, because every use case is different, every client case is different. So through these Eaton microservices on the Brightlayer platform, we can then support customers to tailor that functionality to identify where the efficiencies can lie and measure and monitor the policies that they want to put in place.
Okay, and you mentioned obviously Microsoft and what's going on in North America with another client, but in general, are you finding a much bigger uptake, stroke interest in this area from data center companies, or are you still a little bit frustrated that maybe not enough people are taking it as seriously as you know, if this 2030 target is being hit, we haven't actually got that much time to get there, have we?
No, you look, from a data center right down to a household, everybody thinks it's somebody else's problem. And the only way that will change is either through very, very good creative thinking at a corporate level to redefine what it is to have a sustainability program, connect it with their digitization, and drive it through, or face, honestly, policy change at government level, because it will happen. We're not on a sustainable trajectory. Energy security, energy production, it's top of the agenda. So to avoid the difficult regulations that could come, it's really incumbent on large organizations and large energy intensive organizations, be it pharmaceuticals, industrial processes, food manufacture, and data center. Large energy users have to look differently at combining their sustainability program with their digitization program and really reap the benefits of combining both.
And maybe in finishing, I mean, I guess I know politics and religion are things we're never supposed to discuss amongst you know, ourselves, but one can't help but feel in the UK in particular, you know, that the current government is perhaps sending out slightly mixed messages, and that, you know, there is it seems to be a willingness and a commitment towards sustainability, and yet we hear talk of, you know, whether it's the fracking's coming back for us, or, you know, some of the green levies disappearing, etc. Do you worry slightly that people are, you know, encouraged therefore perhaps to be slower than they would otherwise be in going this direction? Do you worry there's a bit of a mixed message going on, or do you think that regardless of what our, if you like, our paymasters are doing, the, you know, industry is fully committed to going down the sustainable route?
In many ways, data center specifically, I know, is far more progressive and has an appetite for green energy more than any other sector. And they have invested more, not just for hero headlines, but for genuine reasons. They've invested in wind farms, in solar farms. They have been lobbying strong for the energy generation companies and grid operators to provide green energy. So the data center industry is very vocal to push for this to happen. But the bottom line is, they're in the data center and digital industry. They're not in the energy market. It's the governments and the energy producers where the finger has to point to say, what are you doing? What have you been doing? Nobody can say we didn't see this coming. We've been on the path to a digital economy for the last 30 years. Nobody should be surprised. We've known about climate change for the last 50 years. Nobody can be surprised. So it would be inappropriate to single out any consumer sector and to say, oh, it's your fault, you're consuming too much. If frustration pops in, it's the lack of inaction to take earnest steps to get the energy companies, clear the roadblocks out of their way in terms of planning for renewable generation on a large scale measure. And until those actions happen, we won't have energy security in Europe. We won't have green energy. So that really has to happen. And that single act will remove a lot of the concerns we currently have in the industry. To tighten energy consumption is to choke off the economy that keeps everything going. As I recall in a previous conversation, during the COVID crisis, people didn't realize what the healthcare and the hospitals were to society during the COVID times. Data centers are to the economy. The economy kept going, and the digital economy was a principal part. We all continued to be on conference calls. The transactions were all still going. That's data centers, that's digital. If we did not have a digital economy during a pandemic, the economy would have suffered tremendously. So the digital economy and the role of data centers is the engine increasingly of our overall economy. We just want it to be a green version, and that requires renewable generation.
And just maybe finally, then you made it clear that the data center industry isn't the problem, if you like. It's the fact that what's been happening hasn't been addressed on a government level, etc. But do you think the data center industry, as I think has already been doing, can push back a bit more to the energy sector and engage them, or do you think they are just going to have to wait for them to catch up, or can they actually, whether it's, I don't know, threatening to move data centers to places where they do have much more sustainable infrastructure? I mean, what more can the data center industry do, I guess?
Like us all, the data center industry has to live in the reality of the environment they find themselves in and navigate accordingly. Yes, when you put a moratorium on power consumption, be it Frankfurt, Amsterdam, London, or Dublin, you can't expect organizations not to react. They will. And we do see site location strategies changing because of access to power. When a data center looks for a site, it has many parameters to consider. And access to telecom connectivity, access to talent, access to construction industry, but right up there is access to power, and abundant power, so that you can have the power security in that location. I think that's just come highlighted even more top of list. And yes, you do see some ventures moving into the Nordic region, where there is a good supply of government supported and even energy subsidized programs for renewable energy in some of those markets. That's very compelling. So other markets who aren't facilitating data centers in the same way, be prepared to see those digital strategic assets move out of your country and into another, all because you haven't really seen the strategic importance of providing green energy to keep those companies in your jurisdiction. Okay,
it's been brilliant to chat to you today, Ciaran. You shared some really valuable insights, so I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure to chat with you today, and I look forward to the next time.
Thanks again.